Hi there, welcome back. And we're going to be doing a new one of these random tours through the knowledges, through the Western intellectual tradition and out the other side. I won't be overemphasizing on Eastern during this one particularly. Not going to be focusing on a compare-contrast quite so much this time. What I decided to do is just to sort of pick a string of topics that seem to sort of resonate with the rough journey that we're dealing with, and just take a look through them and read the facts and go through as we go through and just see, It's a list. It's also a journey of familiarization on a daily basis. So I think it's very important to say that learning involves familiarization, and I'm learning as I go. In fact, everyone is. You're never kind of a complete and never an expert, I don't think. But you do sort of start to be able to build up connections as we go along. So I'm going to be doing that. And firstly, an outline of what we're going to be doing. So, going to be taking a look at human reason and rationalism, big part of it. Exploring the Enlightenment and that emphasis on reason and rational thought as a means of understanding the world and also of improving society. And then discussing how thinkers like Voltaire and Rousseau, Locke, challenged traditional authority and championed individual liberties and scientific inquiry. Romanticism and subjectivity. So the age of the Enlightenment gave science which gave enormous power to materialism. Therefore, it robbed a lot of the power that was produced by the mystique of the religions. As a countermeasure to this, and the huge rise of factories in places like Birmingham and Berlin, and perhaps in other areas too, Romanticism and subjectivity rose up to challenge that sort of soul-destroying version of values. And we're going to look into the Romantic reaction against Enlightenment rationalism. And we're going to highlight the emphasis on emotion, on nature, and the individual's subjective experience. And we're going to analyze the contributions of figures like Schlegel Brothers in shaping Romantic literature, art, and philosophy. Then there's religion, there's philosophy, and there's Enlightenment. And we'll investigate the relationship between religion, philosophy, and Enlightenment thoughts, considering like the rationalist approaches. People like Spinoza, Baruch Spinoza, and the anthropological insights of people like Sir James Frazer. And we can examine how Enlightenment ideals influenced religious discourse and vice versa, shaping Western intellectual history. Then that groundbed of idealism also gave power to the forces of German idealism gave power to the forces of German nationalism. The removal of the monarchies, with the things like French Revolution and so on, this gave power to forces such as Nazism. And we can reflect on the rise of totalitarian ideologies in the 20th century, contrasting the Enlightenment principles of reason, humanism, with the authoritarian regimes, for example, like Hitler's. Consider also the ethical implications of political extremism, the importance of safeguarding democratic values and human rights. There were other movements that were happening during and preceding that time, like the analytic philosophy, and there was also the language analysis, we can explore that, the analytic philosophy movement, and focus on the logical analysis, the clarity of language in addressing philosophical questions. Influential figures like Bertrand Russell, Ludwig Wittgenstein, and they've had bigger influence on contemporary philosophy and there's a lot of broad implications in their linguistic aspect. We can also look into theological and philosophical synthesis. The synthesis of theology and philosophy. In order to do that, we can look at works of Augustine of Hippo and look into his contributions to Western thought and also the Christian doctrine. Augustine's influence was also on later philosophical traditions and his relevance to contemporary discussions on ethics, metaphysics, and the nature of God. While we're in the philosophical area, we can also do another comparative philosophy with East and West, which in general I'll be doing as we go. Focusing on the Buddha Dharma, the Buddha words of the Buddha, the Buddha's teaching, Buddha Vachana, and we can investigate common themes: impermanence, suffering, the pursuit of enlightenment, and the diversity of thoughts across different cultural and historical contexts. The legacy and the continuity of ideas, and we can reflect about that, the legacy of the thinkers and the movements discussed, and we can consider their ongoing relevance to contemporary debates and intellectual inquiry. We can discuss how philosophical ideas evolve and adapt over time, and we can shape our understanding of the world through that way and how it's going to be influencing future generations of thinkers. Let's start our journey with this one by taking a look at the Enlightenment thinker Voltaire. So, his real name wasn't actually Voltaire. Here is his home place. France. Not that exact place, it's just France in general. Let's go to this one. So, his real name was not Voltaire. His real name was François-Marie Arouet. I'm always inspired by people who've got wit, and he's one of them. Let's move out, they're going a bit fast, maybe. And let's go over a bit as well. Just make sure we can see them as they go past. Good. So Voltaire's name was, he was a prolific writer, producing works in various genres: plays, poetry, novels, essays, philosophical treatises. Voltaire was known for his sharp wit and biting satire, often targeting the French monarchy and the Catholic Church. He was exiled from France multiple times due to his controversial writings. Voltaire corresponded with many influential figures of his time, including Catherine the Great of Russia and Friedrich the Great of Prussia. He had a contentious relationship with philosopher Jean-Jacques Rousseau. Influences on him. Voltaire was influenced by the ideas of English philosophers such as John Locke and such as Isaac Newton. Trivia: Voltaire's most famous work, Candide, is a satirical novel that critiques optimism and philosophical optimism. He has significant quotes such as, "I do not agree with what you have to say, but I'll defend to the death your right to say it." He also has other quotes such as, "Common sense is not so common. Judge a man by his questions rather than his answers. The more I read, the more I acquire, the more certain I am that I know nothing. Life is a shipwreck, but we must not forget to sing in the lifeboats. The art of medicine consists of amusing the patient while nature cures the disease. Prejudices are what fools use for reason. And lastly, to learn who rules over you, simply find out who you are not allowed to criticize." Sounds very timely in his case. So, very interesting man. So Voltaire, key in the Enlightenment. As you can see, he's challenging the Catholic Church and often had to flee for the price that you pay for having courage. Jean-Jacques Rousseau. So he had a contentious relationship with Voltaire. Interesting to see these two and exactly what that was about. Mainly names in here at the moment. Let's pop some quotes out there as well. So Jean-Jacques Rousseau, born in Geneva, Switzerland, moved to France. He is best known for his works The Social Contract and Émile, which influenced political theory and educational philosophy. Rousseau's ideas about the general will and popular sovereignty contributed to the development of democratic theory. He had a tumultuous personal life, including relationships with multiple women and conflicts with fellow philosophers. Rousseau corresponded with Voltaire, but their relationship soured over time due to ideological differences. Vivekananda just showed up there over the screen. I'd be interested, what was his link? Rousseau was influenced by the natural law philosophy of thinkers like John Locke and Jean-Jacques Rousseau. Trivia: Rousseau's autobiographical work, Confessions, is considered one of the earliest examples of the modern autobiography. And some quotes from him. "Man is born free, and everywhere he is in chains. Vivekananda, right, spelled it right. I prefer liberty with danger to peace with slavery." That's a very good one when you think of it. "The world of reality has its limits. The world of imagination is boundless. People who know little are usually great talkers, while men who know much say little. To be sane in a world of madmen is in itself madness." Jean-Jacques Rousseau, "Patience is bitter, but its fruit is sweet. The strongest is never strong enough to be always the master, unless he transforms strength into right and obedience into duty." Jean-Jacques Rousseau again. What wisdom can you find that is greater than kindness? Rousseau, the person who has lived the most is not the one who has lived the longest, but the one with the richest experiences. And Rousseau last, virtue is a state of war, and to live in it, we have always to combat with ourselves. A note on Vivekananda. So, he had great respect and influence from thinkers like John Locke. And the connection with Vivekananda, presumably they both had, they were living in different time periods and cultural contexts, but there are some parallels and point of intersection. There's an emphasis on individual freedom, there's a critique of social conventions, there's a spiritual quest for truth, and there's influence on social and political movements with both of them. The emphasis on individual freedom, both Rousseau and Vivekananda emphasize the importance of individual freedom and self-realization. Rousseau's concept of the noble savage and his belief in the inherent goodness of humanity resonate with Vivekananda's teachings on the divinity of the soul and the potential for self-realization in every individual. This critique of social conventions, Rousseau critiqued the social conventions and inequalities of his time. He was advocating for a return to nature and a simpler way of life. Similarly, Vivekananda criticized social injustices, caste-based discrimination in India, advocating for social reform and the upliftment of the oppressed. They both had a spiritual quest for truth. Rousseau explored the relationship between nature, society, and the self in his philosophical works, while Vivekananda sought to reconcile the teachings of Vedanta with modern science and rational thought. Locke, then. Okay, let's move on to John Locke. I looked a bit busy, so first of all, going to expand that. Otherwise, it just look a bit cluttered. We get the target of it just right. Okay, there's Locke was an English philosopher known as the father of liberalism. His major works included 2 treatises of government and an essay concerning human understanding. And they had a profound impact on political theory and on epistemology. Why do you believe in what you believe in? Locke's ideas on natural rights and the social contract heavily influenced the American and French revolutions. He was a key figure in the development of empiricism, emphasizing the importance of experience and observation in acquiring knowledge. Locke had connections with other prominent intellectuals of his time, including Isaac Newton and Anthony Ashley Cooper, 1st Earl of Shaftesbury. Locke was influenced by the work of earlier philosophers such as René Descartes and Hugo Grotius. Locke's concept of tabula rasa, or the blank slate mind, posits that individuals are born without innate ideas and acquire knowledge through experience. significant quote. The only fence against the world is thorough knowledge of it. Let's have a look at a few ideas before we do that. It's an interesting quote. The only fence against the world is a thorough knowledge of it. So, all right. Reading furnishes the mind only with materials of knowledge. It is thinking that makes what we read ours. An interesting idea. And again, no man's knowledge here can go beyond his experience. And John Locke again. New opinions are always suspected and usually opposed without any other reason but because they are not already common. John Locke again. The end of law is not to abolish or restrain, but to preserve and enlarge freedom. John Locke. Parents wonder why the streams are bitter when they themselves have poisoned the fountain. John Locke. Education begins the gentleman, but reading, good company, and reflection must finish him. John Locke. To love truth for truth's sake is the principal part of human perfection in this world, and the seed plot of all other virtues. John Locke. The improvement of understanding is for two ends. First, our own increase of knowledge. Secondly, to enable us to deliver that knowledge to others. And John Locke again. The actions of men are the best interpreters of their thoughts. Okay, let's move on from John Locke and the Enlightenment thinkers. So we've covered a little bit over Locke, John Locke, and Jean-Jacques Rousseau and Voltaire. So let's take a look at the German Romantics, because just after that period, with the increasing scientific thinking, we're not going to look at all of them. There's quite a large collective. There's a quorum of 5, but 2 of them, brothers, were. One of them was hosting their meetings in Jena, August, and with his wife, Dorothea. And his younger brother, Friedrich, was a good friend of Novalis. So let's take a look at these brothers. I think we can just sort of zoom into either of these two. They're much of a sort of muchness. Before we do that, let's just pause that spinning. Sorry if that's a bit disorienting. So we have, oops, the daisy, Friedrich Schlegel. So he's the younger of the two. August, the older brother, and Friedrich Schlegel were German Romantic poets, critics, and philosophers. And they were central figures in the Romantic movement. So we're going to look at where is August. Here he is. So here's a collective of these people. What I want to do is, I want to get all of, there you go, including Friedrich. So we've got the 2 Schlegels in there. Okay. A Schlegel here and a Hegel there, as my friend said. My map here looks like a Schlegel here and a Hegel there. In, out, shake it all about. Um, yeah, they were central figures in the Romantic movement, which emphasized emotion, nature, and the individual's subjective experience. The Schlegel brothers founded the Athenaeum journal. So that says a lot already. If Athena, they're really focusing on the ancient Greeks, on the Socratic, Platonic, Aristotelian times. While they are in Jena, in the Berlin area, there's deep factory building going on, enormous spread of industrialization, and their response to this is to emphasize emotion, to emphasize nature. So you're seeing increasing, modernization, is spreading sprawl of smoke and chimneys and factories, and they're emphasizing nature and the individual's subjective experience. So rather than getting ploughed into the machine. The Schlegel brothers founded the Athenaeum Journal, which became a platform for promoting romantic ideas and literature. So they're the kind of Pink Floyd of their time in a way. August Wilhelm Schlegel made significant contributions to the study of Indian literature and languages, translating works such as the Bhagavad Gita and the Ramayana into German. So already we get our east-west connection there through August Wilhelm Schlegel, the elder brother. The Schlegel brothers were associated with other romantic figures, such as Johann Wolfgang von Goethe, the writer of the play Faustus, and Novalis. So I remember that Novalis and Friedrich were both about the same age, and they both liked a little toot of cocaine, opium, laudanum. I can't remember exactly which one. It was opium, I believe. So yeah, you had Coleridge and some of the other English romantics. They were also taking a fair bit. I remember this that when Novalis was dying, I believe, that in his diary, Friedrich Schlegel wrote that he was bringing him copious amounts of, pretty sure it was opium. Let me do a quick fact check there. Why can't I find my cursor? Here we go. Here it is. Oh, in fact, I think I actually did a thread on this. Yeah, I did. Let me just check that. Drug taking. Because there are quite a few people down history's lane who have been known to indulge. It's quite interesting to see who and how that works out for them. Let's see who was in that when it loads. Let's just reload it. Sometimes I need a double take. Here we go. Now we've got it. So, I'll drag the box. Here we go. So I just want to highlight this up and see who's in there. Yeah, Samuel Taylor Coleridge, Friedrich Schlegel, Novalis, Sigmund Freud. Yeah, it's all actually. It's not really very dramatic difference from what I was saying earlier. Okay, so let's go back to the Hegel-Schlegel factor. But it can also be, they're talking about a sort of mind-expanding expansion of consciousness, the German Romantics. This afternoon I was listening to a documentary of astronauts who were on the Space Lab missions, and they were describing the change that happened inside themselves as a consequence of seeing the Earth from space, and the composition of humanity spread across the globe as a unity, and that you could see the infinite nature of space as a backdrop. And they were talking in those terms. And when you hear it like that they're talking about life as a unity, space as an infinity, they sound very much like the ideas of the German Romantics. Their views are such that life is one, that the infinite is universe. And they also were invoking this sense of awe as a sort of peak aim of life, to experience that, which also sounds a lot like Ralph Waldo Emerson, James Joyce. There are people who were in the Transcendentalists who were influenced by the German Romantics, who were talking about the parks in America and mountains and nature and this awe and so on as what it's all to be aimed at, the spiritual life. So also Johann Wolfgang von Goethe, who we can take a look at another time. I'll make a note to do that. He's an interesting and influential person, enormously so. Him and Schiller. Here we go. He's mentioned here, right? The Schlegel brothers were influenced by German idealism, particularly the philosophy of Immanuel Kant and Friedrich Schiller. Friedrich Schlegel, the younger, is credited with coining the term Romanticism to describe the literary movement. So novellas are a big, important part. Friedrich Schlegel quotes, "A critic is a reader who ruminates. Thus, he should have more than one stomach." So a kind of satirical comment comparing them to a cow. It's pretty. That's wit. I like that. That's very. Oscar Wilde-ish, actually. It's a good one. Let's have some more quotes from Friedrich Schlegel, and then some from August as well. Poetry is the universal art of the spirit, which has become free in itself and is not tied down for its realization to external sensuous material. Instead, it launches out exclusively in the inner world of ideas and representations. Poetry. Friedrich Schlegel. Another one. Philosophy is properly homesickness, the wish to be everywhere at home. Schlegel. Religion, love, and poetry are all manifestations of the same impulse to create an ideal world, to breathe life into it, and to dwell in it. Another. In actual life, every great enterprise begins with and takes its first forward step in faith. Another one. Every language is a temple in which the soul of those who speak it is enshrined. His brother August. The history of the world is none other than the progress of the consciousness of freedom. And another one, a genuine work of art must mean many things. The truer its art, the more things it will mean. Let's leave it at that. And these are taken somewhat from GPT, so you never quite know. Are those genuine? I haven't double checked those. I just thought I would have a little browse, because some of them, when you hear one like that, he should have. A critic is a reader who ruminates, thus he should have more than one stomach. That idea of champing of a cow like grass was a reader, a critic, sorry. So yeah, German idealism and some of these ideas of the Romantics and Nietzsche, with the will to power, plus this sort of nationalism and this unity. The foment is there, isn't it? You can hear the ground bed of a very powerful idea that can get hijacked, Adolf Hitler. Hitler was the dictator of Nazi Germany from 1934 to 1945. He rose to power in the 1920s and 30s through propaganda, manipulation, exploitation of economic and social grievances. Hitler's regime implemented policies of racial persecution, leading to the genocide of 6 million Jews and millions of other victims during the Holocaust. He initiated World War II with the invasion of Poland in 1939, resulting in widespread devastation and loss of life. People links. Hitler had close associates such as Heinrich Himmler, Joseph Goebbels, and Hermann Göring. He played key roles in his regime. Who played them? Hitler was influenced by extreme nationalism. Hitler was influenced by extreme nationalist and racist ideologies, as well as social Darwinism. Hitler was a failed artist before entering politics, having been rejected twice from the Academy of Fine Arts in Vienna. A couple of quotes from him that tell a lot. Make the lie big, make it simple, keep saying it, and eventually they will believe it. And another one, the victor will never be asked if he told the truth. Okay, I did have one there. So we've covered Voltaire. I'd like to take a look at analytic philosophy now. Yeah. Or the analytic school of philosophy. Let's go there. I'm just going to zoom down on part of it, of this sphere, while I'm doing some reading out. So some key ideas and some key people. Get used to. Mainly people on the screen. All right. So this was a movement, analytic philosophy, a movement spearheaded by figures like Bertrand Russell, Ludwig Wittgenstein. And it focused on logical analysis and clarity of language. Analytic philosophy's emphasis on logical analysis and precision in language sought to address some of the ambiguities and uncertainties in philosophical discourse, drawing on earlier Enlightenment and rationalist traditions. Its engagement with questions of language and meaning intersected with developments in psychology, linguistics, and cognitive science, influencing diverse areas of thought and inquiry. Some more notes on that. Analytic philosophy is a philosophical tradition that emerged in the early 20th century in the Anglo-American world. It emphasizes the use of logic, language analysis, and clarity of thought in addressing philosophical problems. Analytic philosophers often focus on precise definitions, argumentation, and the analysis of concepts to resolve philosophical debates. The movement has its roots in the work of Gottlob Frege, Bertrand Russell, and the early works of Ludwig Wittgenstein. as we saw in our previous one, Wittgenstein changed. So you've kind of got two Wittgensteins, early Wittgenstein, later Wittgenstein. Bertrand Russell, let's have a change on the screen. It's going to go up a bit. We've seen the lower quadrant quite a lot. Let's have a look at the top quadrant there. Okay, there we go. Ooh, we're bumping into another sphere. There we go. Don't want to wander onto their domain. La-di-la. Let's have a quick look. Marxism's involved. Well, dialectics. The Vienna Circle are involved. Knows no bounds. Okay. Could even pull out a little bit more, include a few. Oops, but we will get a little bit of this other one unless we move it over. Should we move it over? Yeah. So it's crashing into this other one a bit too close. Give it some space. Yeah, there's rather too many. I think it's because we're close to the area of philosophy and there's a lot of them. I'm going to drag the analytics far away into their own little world. Go on, off you go. Off you go, go on, get out of it. Let's go to them and have a little look there. Still pretty close to the other one. That'll do. Let's just carry on anyway. You better have a look around the middle section. Deviant. What's he got going on there? Metaphors, pragmatism, realism. David Chalmers. Princeton, Patrick. Pragmatism, quietism. Bertrand Russell, there's our man. Ludwig Wittgenstein. Home run. Feminism. Analytic philosophy. Let's go ahead. Bertrand Russell was a British philosopher, logician, mathematician, and social critic. He was a leading figure in the analytic philosophy movement and made significant contributions to logic, mathematics, epistemology, and social theory. Russell is known for his work on the foundations of mathematics, particularly his collaboration with Alfred North Whitehead on the Principia Mathematica. Some quotes. The good life is one inspired by love and guided by knowledge. The good life is one inspired by love and guided by knowledge. Do not fear to be eccentric in opinion, for every opinion now accepted was once eccentric. Not sure if, again, I'm not, a little caveat, I'm only being given these. The only thing that will redeem mankind is cooperation. The good life is one inspired by love. We heard that one. The trouble with the world is that the stupid are cocksure and the intelligent are full of doubt. Very true. To conquer fear is the beginning of wisdom. That's an interesting one. That's something reminiscent of the Buddha sitting under the Bodhi tree, isn't it? See, Noam Chomsky's down there as well. Yeah, it is to conquer fear. The Buddha overcoming Mara, the arrows and the elephants and charging and managing to quell those things, that's the conquering of fear, is the beginning of wisdom. So that's actually what happened at that point. He began to teach the Dharma, began to realize the Dharma. Freedom of opinion can only exist when the government thinks itself secure. That's interesting. Freedom of opinion can only exist when the government thinks itself secure. It's true, isn't it? I mean, there's some truth in that. And it is preoccupation with possessions more than anything else that prevents us from living freely and nobly. And another one, the secret of happiness is to face the fact that the world is horrible, horrible, horrible. And that quote comes from Russell's autobiography, Bertrand Russell, 1967, in chapter 22. Here's another one. The greatest challenge to any thinker is stating the problem in a way that will allow a solution. And that quote's from Russell's essay, Is There a God?, which was published in his book Mysticism and Logic, 1917. And another one, and this quote comes from his book, Russell's book, Conquest of Happiness, chapter 5, What Makes People Happy. It is preoccupation with possessions more than anything else that prevents us from living freely and nobly. And the quote on the government thinking itself secure, that quote is from Russell's essay Freedom and the Colleges, 1940, which was published in New York Times Magazine on March 10th, 1940. And the other ones do have their sources now that I've asked GPD to present them. This is good practice. So have a look at Mr. Wittgenstein. Let's have a look. Wittgenstein. So if we just stop spinning for a moment, there we go. And we'll head off to Wittgenstein. We're a bit close. Just going to go in the top quadrant. There you go. That was it. So look, picture theory of meaning. Language mirrors reality. If we spoke a different language, we would perceive a somewhat different world. Sense and nonsense. Differentiation between meaningful and meaningless statements. I've heard Jordan Peterson take that approach, where he just stares at someone who just said something to him in a public statement and says, that is a meaningless statement. Something like that. Nietzsche was an influence on Wittgenstein's writing style. All right. Ludwig Wittgenstein was an Austrian-British philosopher regarded as one of the most influential philosophers of the 20th century. He made groundbreaking contributions to logic, philosophy of language, and philosophy of mind. Wittgenstein's early work, presented in the Tractatus Logico-Philosophicus, laid the groundwork for analytical philosophy by emphasizing the importance of logical analysis and the limits of language. So when we talk about limits, we're talking about epistemology. His later work, particularly the Philosophical Investigations, introduces new ideas about language games, meaning, and the nature of philosophy itself. So let's look at some quotes. I find this very revealing, actually, the quote listening. Because you often hear people mentioned, and people will talk, an anecdote, a place, a date, and a bit of a description, but you don't actually hear their words themselves, their thoughts, which is usually what they're mostly about. Here we go. Ludwig Wittgenstein. The limits of my language mean the limits of my world. And this quote is from Wittgenstein's book, Tractatus Logico-Philosophicus, Proposition 5-6, written in 1921. Second one, also from the Tractatus Logico-Philosophicus, the next proposition. Whereof one cannot speak, thereof one must be silent. Well, if that was true, I wouldn't be doing any of these YouTubes. Fact. 3, also from the Tractatus Logico-Philosophicus. The world is everything that is the case. The world is everything that is the case. There's no comma in there. It's not like the world is everything, comma, that is the case. The world is everything that is the case. So it's very difficult from this quote to say what's the meaning meant there for me. Another one from much later in life. So those are from 1921. He's young. 1953 from Wittgenstein's book, Philosophical Investigations. Philosophy is a battle against the bewitchment of our intelligence by means of language. I like that. I like this first bit. Philosophy is a battle against the bewitchment of our intelligence. Whoa. By means of language. Hypnosis. Fifthly, from Wittgenstein, the aim of philosophy is to show the fly the way out of the bottle, that should say it. Oh, there it goes. Out of the fly bottle. This quote is from Wittgenstein's Philosophical Investigations, 1953, section 309. Again, the aim of philosophy is to show the fly the way out of the bottle. It says the fly bottle, but I think back to the Tractatus Logico-Philosophicus, 1921. We feel that even when all possible scientific questions have been answered, the problems of life remain completely untouched. Scientific questions. And another one from 1953, Philosophical Investigations. If a lion could speak, we could not understand him. I think I'd need to hear more about what he meant there. We'll leave it at that, because the last one is that odd one that I don't quite get. The world is all that is the case. I think it's like a case is something in grammar, isn't it? So I think it's probably meaning something like that. All right. So he died on April 29th, 1951 in Cambridge. And he was born in Vienna. Good. Let's look into the ancients a little while. I do like doing this, personally. I like a bit of antiquity. I think it gives some weight to your study. So, and because of antiquity's nature, that it's huge, there's more people in it, it becomes, there's more of them. So it takes a while. It takes quite a while. So there we have Augustine of Hippo in Greece. So I don't know. It's got a couple of links, so I just want to see what they are. Could be something, could be nothing. Right, so that we have a link to Plato and we have a link to philosophy of religion. Let's take a look. Anyway, so I'll just put this back where it was. And Karen having a bit of a look there at Greece and some of the other people. Augustine of Hippo, also known as Saint Augustine, was born on November the 13th, 354 AD in Thagaste, Numidia. Numidia sounds like a disease, like chlamydia. I'm just going to have a look, see if he's on another. I bet he will be on loads of these. These ones are able to look at not only the titles, but the individual nodes. So he's on his own one there, but also Christianity, history of psychology, philosophy of religion, social and political figure, Western philosophers. So let's have a look where he is on history of psychology. That's kind of interesting. That's on one of the lines. Zoosh, there he is. 5th century. What have we got here? Right, let's zoom in a bit. So later on after him, we've got in the 5th century Caelius Aurelianus opposed harsh methods of handling the insane. That's the 5th century. But he's about the year 400, around about. St. Augustine of Hippo published Confessions, which anticipated Freud by near discovery of, what have we got here? Come on. Oh, it's because they're all highlighted, so I need to highlight just the one. There it is. And now I'm going to look at the properties. Move it over. Drag and drop. No, we have to go down a bit. Okay. 397. That's not what we're going to do. Published Confessions, which anticipated Freud by near discovery of the subconscious. Augustine's most complete account of the soul is in De Quantitate Animae, the greatness of the soul. The work assumes a Platonic model of the soul. Interesting, Professor. Okay. What else have we got then? He's in there in Christianity. I think he's just there as a node, probably. Yeah. History of psychology, philosophy of religion. There he is again, just a node. But you can see who he's rubbing shoulders with. Herder, Kant, Anselm of Canterbury, Baron de Holbach, Schleiermacher, Boethius, Averroes, Avicenna. Okay. Just because they're proximate doesn't really mean that much here, but it's interesting to see the genres that he's associated with. Social and political philosophy. Aristotle, Aquinas, Mozi, Confucius. Again, what sort of influence area? Plato. All right. And then Western philosophers. There we go. Which one is it? What's he doing here? August of Hippo, Neoplatonist, original sin, church father. Okay, let's go. Augustine of Hippo, also known as Saint Augustine, was born on November the 13th, 354 AD in Thagaste, Numidia, present-day Souk Ahras, Algeria. Souk Ahras. He was a prolific writer, theologian, philosopher, and bishop of Hippo Regius in Roman Africa, modern-day Annaba, Algeria. Augustine is best known for his autobiographical work Confessions, in which he reflects on his early life, conversion to Christianity, and spiritual journey. His philosophical and theological works include The City of God and On Christian Doctrine, had a profound influence on Western Christianity and philosophy. Augustine's teachings shaped key doctrines of Christianity, including original sin, predestination, and the nature of God's grace. So he's got a lot to answer for. He is considered one of the most important figures in the development of Western thought and has been widely studied and admired for his intellectual contributions. Some trivia: Augustine was originally trained in rhetoric and taught rhetoric in Carthage and Rome before his conversion to Christianity. He had a tumultuous relationship with his mother, Monica, who prayed fervently for his conversion and witnessed it shortly before her death. Augustine's intellectual journey led him through various philosophical and religious traditions, including Manichaeism, Manichaeism, not sure how you say it, and Neoplatonism before embracing Christianity. He played a prominent role in the controversies of his time, including debates with Pelagius over the nature of grace and free will. Augustine's influence extended beyond theology and philosophy to literature, with his works inspiring writers such as Dante, Thomas Aquinas, and John Calvin. Sorry, that's not very helpful, is it? And let's zoom into Greece, which is kind of about there somewhere, and then flip round. Some quotes there. I'll zoom out a bit. There it is. Thou hast made us for thyself, O Lord, and our heart is restless until it finds its rest in thee. So while we're getting very Christian and everything, let's tune in here and let it spin as he did. He was clinging to his Christian views like nobody's business. Reborn again. Thou hast made us for thyself, O Lord, and our heart is restless until it finds its rest in thee. Let's go down a bit to hell for my blasphemy. There you go. See a bit more. Yeah, it's all going on in there, isn't it? Baptism, Jehovah's Witness, Adventism. Don't get me going on it. All right, let's have a look. Quote, love and do what thou wilt. It's a dangerous idea. Love and do what thou wilt. Next, the world is a book, and those who do not travel read only one page. I like that one. I do like that one. Just a moment. I want to get the source of these quotes. Or some other ones. Sorry. Be right there within a moment. Augustine of Hippo. So I like that one. I like that. The world is a book, and those who do not travel read only one page. Right. So that one is attributed to Augustine, although the exact source is uncertain. Next one, patience is the companion of wisdom. Again, exact source uncertain. And last one, God judged it better to bring good out of evil than to suffer no evil to exist. Thanks, God. Thanks for the Holocaust. This quote is from Augustine's work, Enchiridion, 421 AD to 426 AD. Took him 5 years to come up with that one. Chapter 27. I think that's... So, thou hast made us for thyself, O Lord, and our heart is restless until it finds its rests in thee. This quote is from Augustine's autobiographical work Confessions, Book 1, Chapter 1. It's at the beginning. Love and do what thou wilt. This quote is from Augustine's sermon on 1 John 4, 4-12, which is often referred to as On Christian Doctrine, Book 1, Chapter 4, Section 4. All right, and that helps me get a bit of better insight into what's going on in his noodle. Personally, I find that very useful. I recognize a lot of these ideas once I actually hear them. Once I actually get the gist of what's being said. Often when you just hear a famous name, there's not really much to go on. So let me just stop it rotating. The roast beef, the barbecue, and let's go to anthropology. Is it 4? So there should be another one. Yeah, this one's got a bit more going on in it, as it were. Yeah, there we are. All right, now very interesting. I do notice that when you go to something and look about psychology, there is just tons of material. Anthropology, there's just not quite so much. It's like they tried to snuff it out in some ways in the intellectual or academic arena. They didn't, it got its birthright and got going as a discipline, but it didn't get nearly as much support as psychology and psychiatry. Seemed to me. Let's have a look. So the term anthropology is derived from the Greek words anthropos, human, and logos, study, meaning the study of humans. Margaret Mead, a pioneering anthropologist, conducted field work in Samoa in the early 20th century. So let's see if we can get some Margaret Mead going. I'm not sure if that's zooming because it's still on the spin. I think you have to stop the spin and then go to it. Go on. Off we go. How about that one? History of Psychology. Oh, there she is. Okay. 1894. Oh, it's the wrong Margaret. Hold on. There you go. Margaret Mead. Well, there's only one Margaret Mead, as they used to say. Okay, well, that's a individual node. Okay, let's go back to the anthropology. Okay. I remember there were some controversies about this. Her field work. I remember that. But there's quite a few. There's more than that. There's Franz Boas and there's James Frazer. Let's go. What we got here? Margaret Mead, a pioneering anthropologist, conducted fieldwork in Samoa in the early 20th century and challenged conventional Western beliefs about gender and sexuality. Franz Boas, often considered the father of American anthropology, emphasized cultural relativism and advocated for the scientific study of diverse cultures. He was quite different. He really went there. He wasn't an armchair philosopher. He really went to the East Papua New Guinea and learnt the language and lived among the people, which I'm sure that didn't bias how they behaved. Boasian anthropology, there you go. Anthropologists have studied unique cultural practices, such as the Trobriand Islanders' intricate system of gift-giving and the Yanomami tribes' rituals of shamanism and warfare. I'm just trying to remember whether it was Franz Boas who I studied. I watched a video of him. He was up in the Arctic and he was living with Inuit Eskimos. I wasn't that impressed. It was like they were capturing a seal, and then ripping its guts open, then eating it raw, and feeding that to his children. But the people who came to help him, this guy who had sort of shot or used maybe even a bow, I think he'd shot them. But the idea was it was all very noble and savage, in kind of a Rousseauian terms. But to be honest, like his two friends came to drag the carcass back to the camp with snow plows, they sort of snowmobiles. Sorry, not snow plows, snowmobiles. So, that means that there's an engineer, a mechanic somewhere, and there's a school, and there's a college, and there's a city nearby. This in many ways, it seemed like this Eskimo, while he was being glorified by, I'm pretty sure it was Franz Boas. While he's being glorified by Boas was, to me, could have just been the sort of hick cousin who was the retard who also decided that, we're just not going to go to educate. We're just going to live like this, like this. So if I went over to the pond over the road here in Perth, Western Australia, and just ripped a pelican's guts open and started eating the innards, I think I'd get put away. And if I started feeding it to children, I'd definitely get put away. So, no, I don't think anyone would be going, wow, he's so authentic, he's so real, that's the old ways. No, I think it's just something else. Certainly doesn't get much gravitas in Buddhism. I'm just looking for that name. I know there was Lucien Levy-Bruhl, who was also involved in Papua New Guinea. I'm pretty sure it was Boas. Okay. The field of forensic anthropology applies anthropological techniques to help identify human remains in criminal investigations and mass disasters. Let's have a look at Sir James Frazer. I love this. When I first saw that there was a monk, Sujato, who was using the golden bough somehow as a way to understand Buddhism, I was really alarmed. I didn't like that idea at all when I first came across that. But since then, so I went off and decided that when I got onto this to go and to just put myself through this action of reading it and see what I could see, because I saw it was about magic, and I instantly thought, oh no, that's not a good thing to be, a good way to be looking at Buddhism. But I could sort of see the line of logic. The line of logic was much to do with magic, like in ancient and primitive, so-called primitive peoples, you have magical thinking, and then that gradually morphs and evolves into a religious, worshipping. And then from there it goes to scientific, as if there's a sort of path of progress from highly neurotic magical thinking to mildly neurotic in the middle, which is religious thinking, to sanity and rationalism, which is scientific. So that was the kind of line of thinking of it. I thought there was more going on here. The Golden Bough. Let's have a quick look at that. That's that book that I'm referring to. I'll also have a look if let's get to people who love Joseph Campbell's work, or are very influenced by Joseph Campbell's work, like to look into this. He's obviously there. Well, we've flown out because I'm also going to be having a look on the other search bar. Anthropologist of religion. Because he was studying a lot of things, the myths. It's very interesting reading, because it's very much of its time. It's just interesting from that point of view, per se. Because the information was coming back from all these colonial missionaries and trading companies. Okay, we're back at the Golden Bough. And, just reading the descriptions of all these sort of bizarre styles of behaviour from around the world. It's just it's a catalogue of them. Camille Paglia, her description of the book Golden Bough was that it was a combination of scrupulous investigative research, and cataloguing plus speculative philosophy or something like that. Yeah, and she is. Camille Paglia is I find her very amusing and interesting person. Anyway, let's get on with it. So James Frazer originally trained as a classicist and served as a fellow at Trinity College, Cambridge, before turning his attention to anthropology. Frazer's work, The Golden Bough, takes its name from the mythical golden bough sought by Aeneas in Virgil's Aeneid, symbolizing rebirth and regeneration. The Golden Bough influenced modern literature, including T.S. Eliot's poem The Waste Land, and inspired artists such as James Joyce and D.H. Lawrence. Frazer's theories were controversial and often criticized for their Eurocentric perspectives and outdated evolutionary framework. Despite its academic significance, the Golden Bough was initially intended as a study of folklore and superstition and was not intended to be a comprehensive work on anthropology. So they're an influential thinker, and you can start to sort of join the dots. Talking of which, I'd like to take a look at another sort of atheist. In that case, it was a scientist taking a scientific approach to magical thinking and religion. And I'm pretty sure, so Baruch Spinoza, that's going to be in Holland. Yeah, it's on the back. Where's Holland? About here. Wow. There's Baruch Spinoza. Go on, round you go. Roundabout. So we're going to be right up against the map. Let's go zooming out and spin slightly. It's not that important to see where he's on. I've been finding that as I've been going through this sort of history of ideas, that where people are from, not so important. How the ideas knit into this sort of map of meaning and map of other philosophies, there's a whole other thing. So there's Baruch Spinoza, and there's his years. And I'm going to put him also in because you hear his name a lot. So let's jump around here. He's Age of Enlightenment thinkers table. So we've got Age of Enlightenment, and he's one of them. Let's just circulate that to have a look at some of the other people who he's rubbing shoulders with. About 10 of whom I don't even recognize. Who's Provost? Swammerdam, Kanteme, von Widzin, Karaskov. Okay, well, I haven't seen one other one. Berkeley, I recommend. Barclay, recognize him. Most of the other. De Holbach, Rousseau. He's clutching at straws here, but all of those other ones on there, I know what Greece is, of course, but Playfair, Burla-Marquis. So these, it just goes to show, you think you've got a little bit of accumulated sort of soccer cards. Oh no. All right. And let's pause Mr. Spinoza there. Where else does he show up? That's the one that we've just come from, I'm pretty sure. Yeah. And this one is, he was associated with Fichte. He's in the Fichte file. Who presumably was a One of them was a scholar of the other one. I think Fichte must have been a student of... Oh, I remember this, yeah. Yeah, starting to ring a bell. History of psychology. What happened there then? We have a key date, that's all it is. This is the date that he died, I think, I believe. 1677, Baruch Spinoza died, leaving ethics demonstrated in geometrical order. Part 2, focus on something. Philosophy of religion, he shows up. Let's see who he's rubbing shoulders with there in that discipline, and what kind of ideas. It's not, that's what interests me most. Like, so William James, naturalism, the best of all possible worlds, inconsistent. Mysticism. What was that other one that was down there? Iranian triad or something. Friedrich. Oh, there it is. Iranian theodicy. Okay, let's leave it at that. And then one, he was in social political philosophy as well. All right. Baruch Spinoza was excommunicated from the Jewish community of Amsterdam in 1656 for his unorthodox views, including his denial of the immortality of the soul and his rejection of divine revelation. Spinoza earned a living as a lens grinder, producing high-quality lenses for microscopes and telescopes, while devoting his free time to philosophy. His philosophical masterpiece, Ethics, was published posthumously and was originally written in Latin, making it accessible to a European audience. Spinoza's philosophy influenced the Enlightenment thinkers, including Voltaire and Diderot, and later philosophers such as Friedrich Nietzsche and Gilles Deleuze. Albert Einstein admired Spinoza's concept of God as immanent in nature and once said, "I believe in Spinoza's God, who reveals himself in the lawful harmony of all that exists, but not in a God who concerns himself with the fate and the doings of mankind." That's an interesting take on ideas. Let's have a look at William James, who was heavily influenced lots of facts here about William James. Way too many. Yeah, it's okay, but let's go in at the top part and zero that. Okay, let's take a look what we've got here for William James. He advocated for hands-on experience learning methods. Presented complex ideas with clarity and accessibility. Explored altered states of consciousness through experimental methods. Thought that education should foster curiosity, critical thinking. Grounded philosophy in human experience. He was pragmatic. Developed the concept of the stream of consciousness. argued for a pragmatic approach to truth and belief. You get the idea. Man's man. William James was an American philosopher and psychologist born on January. Quotes. I'm just going to get some quotes for him. All right. American philosopher, psychologist born on January 11, 1842 in New York City, USA. He was one of the most influential figures in American philosophy and psychology, known for his pragmatic approach and contributions to the study of consciousness, free will, and religious experience. Let's have a quick quote from him. The only cure for contempt is counter-contempt. This quote is from William James's essay, What Makes a Life Significant, in 1899. Well, that's not very Buddhist. So, the only cure for contempt is counter-contempt. He was one of the most influential figures in American philosophy and psychology, known for his pragmatic approach and contributions to the study of consciousness, free will, and religious experience. So a quote, act as if what you do makes a difference. It does. And this quote is often attributed to William James, but the exact source is not known. James's major work, The Principles of Psychology, published in 1890, is considered a landmark in the field of psychology and established him as a leading thinker in the burgeoning field. Let's just pause let's go back. Pause this and get some William James from the timelines. So he shows up here in 1890 as having published The Principles of Psychology. He shows up in The Philosophy of Religion, along with Baruch, Spinoza, and a whole host of other people I don't recognize the names of. He shows up in Psychology, William James, along with, I know Wilhelm Wundt, Psychophysics, Qualitative, Ivan Pavlov, Donald Campbell. He shows up on a scientific timeline. That's not easy to get in at all. What doing? No, that's James Ellis. William James. Well, it's a mistake. The Varieties of Religious Experience. Now, I know he wrote this book, so we're good there. Fudouche. Excuse me. Where's that? Oh, here is the Varieties of Religious Experience. He shows up, interesting, with Theodore Flournoy as a contemporary of William James in Flournoy's sphere. And that's the field of psychology. So he had connections with Jung and Freud, Flournoy. Oh, was he the one with the Mars and India book? Yeah, he studied spiritism and psychic phenomena. He wrote, there was a book, From Here to Mars, and he was studying people who were claiming to be psychics and mediums. Okay, so Western philosophers. William James. There he is. Pragmatism, radical empiricism. Radical empiricism. I like the sound of finding out what that is, and I'm sure what it is. Here we go. That's just him there on the map. And Kifia. So these are his big interests, and so on and such forth. Challenging dualistic views of body and mind. Okay, let's carry on. He was a founding member of the philosophical movement known as Pragmatism, which emphasizes the practical consequences of beliefs and the importance of experimentation and experience in determining truth. James was deeply interested in religion and spirituality, and his explorations of religious experience led to his initial influential work, The Varieties of Religious Experience, which examines the psychological aspects of faith and mysticism. Whoa, we've flown off. Where did we go from that? We got to there from there. Go on, back you go. James. Where's that? Sorry, I just pressed one button and it's gone all offed out of it. Right, this is where we need to be able to do that. I'll just zoom in a random other bit. You can see some facts circulating around the place and have a listen. Maybe getting a bit closer. The Transcendentalists. The Transcendentalist movement emerged in the early 19th century in New England with figures such as Ralph Waldo Emerson, Henry David Thoreau, and Margaret Fuller. Transcendentalists believed in the inherent goodness of people and nature, the importance of intuition and individuality, and the interconnectedness of all things. So, transcend. Unfortunately, that word shows up in quite a lot of different things. Usually not what I'm looking for. Transcendentalism. Existentialism, it shows up in. With phenomenology and Western Marxism, various things. Philosophy by era. All the different eras of philosophy, that's one of them. One of the isms. Philosophy of religion. It shows up here. One of the philosophies of religion. Onwards. And spirituality, it's in. It's interesting. Things like the Theosophical Society and, more abstract thought to do with that. Western philosophers, well, Ralph Waldo Emerson with the Transcendental is there. An ist, he's a transcendentalist, abolitionist, egalitarian and humanist, and also Henry David Thoreau as well. Also a transcendentalist, pacifist, also an abolitionist against slavery. So, the good guys, I'd say. We got one that we can probably, philosophy and religion, transcendentalism, it's pop it in there while we get it circulating around some of those similar or other ideas around and about. The Transcendentalist movement emerged in the early 19th century in New England with figures such as Ralph Waldo Emerson, Henry David Thoreau, Margaret Fuller. Transcendentalists believed in the inherent goodness of people and nature, the importance of intuition and individuality, and the interconnectedness of all things. Ralph Waldo Emerson, often considered the leader of the Transcendentalist movement, emphasized self-reliance, spiritual growth, and the importance of nature in achieving transcendence. Henry David Thoreau, another prominent transcendentalist, lived a simple, solitary life at Walden Pond and wrote Walden, a reflection on nature, self-reliance, and the pursuit of truth. Transcendentalists rejected strict religious doctrines and advocated for a personal, intuitive approach to spirituality influenced by Eastern philosophies and mystical traditions. There is another side of that that interests me, between the difference between these three, or four if you like, Ralph Waldo Emerson, Henry David Thoreau, Margaret Fuller, and William James, compared to their German Romantic counterparts, all those Friedrichs, Schlegel, Schleiermacher, Hegel, all of them, Novalis, with many of those, or most of those, if not all of them, I tried counting them up once, researching them, finding they were all Freemasons, whereas these ones, with this rejection of a sort of structured religion and a club, don't go there. I don't think any of these guys were Masons. Pretty sure not. Anyway, William James was deeply influenced by the Transcendentalist movement and its emphasis on individual experience, intuition, and the interconnectedness of all things. He shared the Transcendentalists' interest in the exploration of consciousness and the spiritual dimensions of human existence, although he approached these topics from a more empirical and psychological perspective. James' pragmatic philosophy can be seen as a continuation of the Transcendentalist emphasis on the practical consequences of beliefs and the importance of lived experience in shaping one's worldview. Both James and the Transcendentalists were concerned with the search for meaning and purpose in life, as well as the relationship between the individual and the universe. James' work on religious experience, particularly the varieties of religious experience, can be seen as a continuation of the. Sorry, I'm not sure. Never mind. Can be seen as a continuation of the Transcendentalist exploration of spirituality and the quest for transcendence. Now we've gone all kind of Star Trek-y. Okay. There we go. So thank you once again for another long journey, an hour and 37. If you've been with us throughout the whole thing, I'd be amazed. Stick with it. I'm enjoying doing this. It's a daily cruise through this, and it's a way of building up and catching up for my lost educational years. And building up and building up and building up each day, more and more understanding of the Western intellectual tradition and the network and parameters of it. And then it's easy to understand how it compares and contrasts with my Buddhist training. And to build a sort of stronger understanding of it that way around. Okay, once again, thanks very much.